Hi, everybody. I'm Aleeza Ben Shalom, and tonight we have a new guest with us. This is Danielle Selber, and we are so excited to be here with you tonight to talk about skeletons in the closet. And what did we say? How much should you share in dating, right? We've all got stuff, personal stuff, private stuff, information that doesn't belong to the masses. It does not go on your dating profile. It's stuff that we have, but it's not necessarily stuff that we're going to share. And we need to make sure that we know what to share and when to share it and how to share it. So I'm going to bring up a few topics. We're going to run through it. And then as usual, we are going to have a Q&A. Danielle's going to throw out the questions. I'm going to answer some things, and we're going to just get rolling with this. So the first question is like, well, wait, what kind of skeletons are you talking about, Aleeza? Are you talking about like, I don't know, I was bullied when I was, in 5th grade and, I got beat up on the playground? Or are we talking about some serious skeletons where maybe I have medical issues or family members that have some medical issues, or I don't know, I haven't been able to hold down a job in the last 2 years. I thought I was this amazingly stable human being, but this to me is very not stable. It's not good. It doesn't feel healthy. And I don't want to tell anybody. Maybe I'll just like fake it on my resume or on my dating profile. What do I do and how do I share things? So I don't have like one size answer to fit all situations, because if you are a person in this world, then your situation is unique and different. And the person that you're dating is also going to be unique and different, which means that for this person, you might not tell them until a 5th date. For this person, maybe not till a 10th date. For that person, you're maybe never going to tell them. So what's the first rule of thumb? If I could give you a generic rule of thumb, rule number 1 is you need to feel close enough that telling this person this information is relevant. Okay, it means that I like you, you like me, and there's enough of a connection that you need to know this information, right? If we're on a first date or a second date, do I need to share the skeletons in my closet? No. Why? I don't even know if I'm going to see you a third time. I don't know if you like me. If you're going to say no to me anyway, do I need to disclose my personal information to you? No, I don't. I don't need to share everything about me with you until I know that you're going to be my person. And if you're not going to be my person, then that information about me is not for you. It's confidential, it's private, it's about me. I'm only going to start to share information when I think that there's a connection between us. And when I think that there's something here that's worthwhile for me to invest in. And when I'm close enough to feel connected with you, but I'm not all the way in where I buy into you and you buy into me, and now I can't make a clear decision. Okay. So here's the difference, and here's the nuance of what I want you to catch. If you like somebody and they like you, and things are really getting heated, and oh my gosh, it's only a 3rd date, but it feels like I've known you forever, and you're like my best friend that I never had, and I'm just gaining connection. You might have to speak up at a 4th date and say something, because your connection might be that close. On the opposite end, you could be going out 6, 7, 8, 9 times, and you might feel like, I don't even know if I still like you. I mean, I know I don't not like you, right? So I'm going to still go out with you because I might be neutral, and I might follow Aleeza's rule of when in doubt, go out, or date them till you hate them. So I'm going to keep dating you, but I don't know if this really works for me. And because I don't know if this really works for me, maybe you don't need this information. Like, when should I tell you? So sometimes telling somebody a little bit about yourself will bridge that gap, and it'll start to bring a couple closer. And it's like, wow, I'm so deeply affected. You told me about this, and that was something really personal, and I really appreciate that. Other times you tell somebody and they're like, whoa, they're a little freaked out. They're like, oh, I liked you, or I sort of liked you, but now I'm all confused because I don't even know what to do with that information, and I was still processing about you. And so we're always in this juggling act of when to share something. So I want to give you maybe a little bit also. I like to give like generic guidelines, but then we have to always make it something specific to you. So if you're hesitating to tell somebody, if you're unsure, if you're not ready, I would tell you to pause and wait and sleep on it and consider it for the next date. Okay. Because you've got two options. Either I'm going to rush, I'm going to tell you right now, or let me just think about it a little bit longer. Maybe I'll tell you next time. I'm going to tell you to sleep on it one more night, because I don't want you to rush into telling somebody information if you're not comfortable. Because as soon as you tell somebody information that's personal and private, it's a skeleton in your closet, whatever it is, you are extremely vulnerable. And if you're not in a safe space and you're not feeling comfortable enough with somebody to share with them, then it's not the right time to tell them. So it means that we need to wait a little longer. So my rule of thumb is not to rush to tell them. I need like a catchphrase, Danielle, if we come up with something, not when in doubt go out, but this is like, to tell or not to tell. It's like sleep on it one more night. We need a little phrase. Anybody who wants to come up with one of these catchphrases that we like to have, right? The rule of thumb is, don't tell right now. If you're unsure, coming out of the closet. If you're unsure, I don't know. Somebody was typing that in. If you're unsure, there's no rhyme that's coming to my mind. We'll come up with it. Okay. We'll come up with it by the end of the webinar. That is our challenge, to come up with the rule of thumb of what we should do about skeletons in the closet.
I thought of it.
You thought of it?
I think so. Like something like, if you're unsure, keep the skeletons in the door.
Okay. And somebody just wrote something in there about when in doubt, hold out. That's good. When in doubt, hold out. Okay. Okay, great. Okay, we've got 2 catchphrases. If you come up with any more that are good, throw them in there. It might become a regular thing. Like if we hear it, we will say it. So we need a generic approach, and then you need a specific approach. The specific approach is, we need to go within and we need to figure out, what am I comfortable to share? And maybe whatever your skeleton is a bigger skeleton. And maybe you need to break it down and just share a bit of information. And then maybe on another date, a bit more, you could expand on the information. It's not that you're holding information, you're not withholding anything. It's just that it's not relevant until you're somebody important to me, and you're not important to me until I feel connected to you. And if I don't feel connected to you today, I'm not going to share this information with you today. I'm going to wait another date or another 2 dates until I share more information. Now, word of caution, don't tell half a story and be like, oh, and I'll tell you the other half later when I feel a little more connected to you. No, thank you. Either tell me or don't tell me, and don't tell me what I'm missing out on. Later on, when you want to update me, you can say, God forbid there was a situation and somebody in your family was sick. So you could say, we had a situation and so was ill, and it was a very difficult period in my life and the whole family, and there was a rift in the family, and it was very challenging, right? And then a few dates later, you can say, yeah, it was so challenging that I didn't speak to so-and-so for the next year. And it was really, when I say it was challenging for me, that was kind of the tip of the iceberg of what I shared, but here's a little bit more to the story. And then maybe later on you want to say, and PS, down the road, 5 years later, we were able to repair the relationship, but to be honest, it's never been the same. Now, do I want to tell you that all at once? I maybe don't. It's maybe none of your information. It's maybe too vulnerable or too uncomfortable for me. And so I might want to drip the information to you because A, you don't need all of the information. And B, I'm not comfortable to share it. It's my personal life. It's something about me. If we don't work out, I don't need you and you and you and every you to have my information. This is my personal thing. So I really only want to share this with people that I'm feeling especially connected to, or people that I think have potential to be my long-term person. So that's a little bit about skeletons in the closet. And I want to leave time to open this up because I think that this topic is different than a lot of other topics where there's a lot of specifics that we'd need to answer and less generic wisdom and information that we can just apply to every single situation. So I really want to open it up to the Q&A. We have questions that came in beforehand, and we have questions that you guys can put in the chat right now. So I'd love to open that up and for Danielle to, help us flesh this topic out.
Hey guys, very nice, Aleeza. We actually do have a Q&A question that's in the chat, so why don't we start with that one since it's probably top of mind for the attendees. Also, my usually nonverbal son is chatting with us, so that's cool. Question. If a young woman is in her 40s, is there an appropriate way to ask through a shadchan whether she has planned ahead regarding fertility? Very universal question.
Yeah, so it's a really great question, and it's something that's on the mind of a lot of different, people. If you're specifically working with a matchmaker, I think it's appropriate to ask the matchmaker to say, "Hey, I am looking to have children. I know many women in general," make it a generic statement. Many women in general have had fertility treatments. They've frozen eggs. They've kind of prepared for, a backup plan. And do you have any idea if she's made any arrangements, or do you have any awareness of this? You might want to say, if you don't, please don't ask her, because I don't want this to be uncomfortable, or I don't want it to come from me. Or if you are on the opposite end and you're like, and if you don't know, could you please somehow generically find that information out? Because if she didn't make those plans, then I'm uncomfortable continuing to date. Right? So depending on who you are and what your preference is, I think you might want to word it differently. I wouldn't specifically ask that person on a first, second, or third date. I would ask it a little bit later when it's a little bit more relevant. But if you have somebody in between who's your go-between, then I think you could actually ask them in a respectful way.
So a relevant question from the questions that folks submitted in advance. Someone asked, how do you get people to disclose their skeletons without making them feel bad, and also not after you are already engaged?
So how to not make them feel bad, and also not to do it so late in the game. Usually the way that we do it is by mirroring. So that means I'm going to share something very personal about me, and then I'm going to hope that you, or ask you to share something personal about you. And we kind of do a little bit of ping pong and a little bit of a volley of a conversation back and forth. I would also say before engagement, I'll tell you my personal story. So my husband, before we got engaged, he like tossed me his wallet. He's like, "Here, you want to know anything about me? Take a look." I'm like, okay. And I like literally went through his wallet, and, you see all kinds of cards and, things that people have in there, and you learn a little bit more about them. And so it did help to bring up some very relevant, interesting topics for us. And I was like, oh, this is a cool activity. Like, here's all about me, sweetheart. Anything you want to know. So you might want to just say to them, listen, before we get to this like engagement and next stage, is there anything like that I still don't know about you that might be relevant or important? And you could say, I've been really thinking about on my end, if there's anything that I could share with you. And if you could come up with one thing, big, little, I don't care what it is, but if you could come up with one thing, then it helps the other person to open up. And you can say, listen, I know I just like threw this question out on you tonight. So like, think about it. We can talk about it, the next time we go out. But, it's kind of important that we cover all basics, all bases and all topics. And if there's anything else that's on your mind, let me know. And they might be like, well, like what kind of things? So you can give them things that you're thinking about, whether it's something personal about you, or family, or history, or medical something, or educational something, or everybody has all different kinds of skeletons. So I don't even know what to make up. If you guys have ideas in the chat, you can throw down what are your ideas of topics, of things that people might have in terms of skeletons in their closet. Danielle, if you see things come up, you can read them out, because I'm on my phone, so it doesn't pop up nicely.
Yeah, there's a question relevant to the medical piece. So someone asked, if the problem is a health problem that's still present, it's not quite a skeleton, how do you manage that?
Yeah, so I would still call it a skeleton in your closet, meaning it's still something you have to deal with, even whether it's past or present. It's still something that's hidden and not revealed. So I would say also at the right time, where there's this fine line between, oh, we're dating, I like you, there's something here, to, oh, we want to get engaged. And then there's this middle point where it's like, I like you, you like me, there's something here, but we're both not all in yet, but we're in enough that I should probably tell you this. That's the moment that you want to say something. Again, if you're not sure if that's the moment, the rule of thumb is, what's our rule of thumb? When in doubt, hold out. I can remember that one. When in doubt, hold out and wait till the next date and see if it's more appropriate then.
Another question regarding this topic is someone is asking when it comes to dating, when they should have disclosed that they're a veteran, that they were at war.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's so interesting. And I don't necessarily see that as a skeleton in somebody's closet. Although if there's, PTSD and other things that are going on from that, like to me, it's kind of like a medal of honor that you wear, like a badge of honor, and something that's very important. But I could see how it could be a skeleton in somebody's closet if they have any sort of trauma around it or things that have negatively impacted them over the course of their life. So again, I would say you could share that at that point that you're feeling a little bit more connected. If you're comfortable sooner, you could share it sooner. But again, if it's a more raw, open wound, if it's something that you're still hurting from or healing from, or you feel very sensitive about, then I would still just wait until it's appropriate, where you feel like that person is somebody that's special to you and that you'd like to share it because you want to progress your relationship and you'd like to see where it can go from there.
Aleeza, we have a bunch of questions that are about like specific disclosures that one might make. So maybe you can sort of rapid fire answer those.
Okay.
Not that you have to rapid fire, I will rapid fire. So the first one is, when do you disclose if you were laid off specifically because of COVID-19?
Okay, so for COVID, I feel like even though it's a skeleton, it's pretty normal. This is what's happening. It could be shared sooner, but the question is, like, if somebody says, "What do you do?" and you can say, "I'm an accountant," and right? You didn't say if they say, "Where do you work?" Now you have a problem. But if they say, "What do you do?" you can still explain what you do. If they say, "Where do you work?" By me, I think it's so normal in these days to be able to say, unfortunately, due to the circumstances, my, position was furloughed, laid off, whatever the language is that you want to use. And I've been seeking some new opportunities and have some, interesting things on the horizon. Hopefully you could say you have some interesting things on the horizon, or use some creative language to describe not just what was, but tell me what will be, right? Imagine your future and go down that road. I know where you were, but I care more about where you're heading and where your heart is going and where your feet are taking you. So make sure to balance out the conversation. So if somebody asks you, I would just be honest with them, but honest with a confidence, right? Like, "Oh yeah, I was laid off. Oh, it's been so rough. COVID. I haven't worked in like 10 months. It's been awful. I have like no money. I'm broke." Not the kind of conversation we want to have. Instead, we want to have I lost my position. Maybe you don't want to say how long ago unless they ask you, none of their business. And due to COVID, and I've been looking, there's some really interesting opportunities coming up, and I've been weighing my options and seeing what's going to be the best fit for me. And I'm going to make a decision soon about what direction I'm heading. It's an interesting time. Try to have a little positivity about it. The way you spin it is how they're going to feel about it, right? So if you spin negativity, they're going to feel negativity. If you spin positivity, they're going to feel positivity coming from you.
And an added layer to the COVID-19 situation, people are asking about vaccination. How appropriate is it to ask? Do you have to disclose if you are or are not? How do you manage?
Oh, yeah. Crazy good topic. And we discussed it last week, called Vaccinating. That was our webinar. And we went into that heavily. So you should definitely watch the replay of Vaccinating. In short, I will tell you, I've heard everything. I've heard some people who are afraid to tell their status, and so they won't disclose it. Other people who are like, "I'm going to put it on my dating profile, loud and proud. This is what I did, or this is what I didn't do, and I am happy. And if you're on board with that, then I'm on board with you." So I don't mind which direction you go. It depends on who you are and what your circumstances are. It seems to me modern day, and again, I went into this last webinar, but it seems to me modern day that this is big just like politics, it used to not be so big, and now it's like the thing. And if you're on different ends of the political spectrum, you can hardly see eye to eye in life. The same thing is happening right now with getting a shot. It just, you're on one side or you're on the other, and unless you're in the middle, you can't really meet so sweetly. So watch the webinar. There was a lot of good content.
Very fun. How about someone asked about gun ownership, disclosing gun ownership in what he perceives to be a situation where some people are not comfortable with that during dating.
Yeah, awesome. That's a great skeleton in the closet. So gun ownership, if you are, pro freedom and rights and, your right to protect and take care of yourself and your country, then you're going to be on board with somebody who's okay with it. If you're going out with somebody who's on a very liberal end of the spectrum, who believes that we should get rid of them and make them disappear, then this is not going to be a match for you. It's a tough call, right? Like if you actually write on your profile something about gun ownership, it's probably a red flag that there's something wrong. Like most people don't mention gun ownership. Danielle, maybe you could tell me also, because you've been reading through people's profiles and kind of have an awareness. But I think that writing about gun ownership might be a red flag, but saying some of your hobbies and interests are things like going to the shooting range and this and that, if you like throw it in there with something, I think it's like a little bit more of an acceptable way to talk about it. And I think in general, if you talk about somebody's either politics or how they lean with certain policies, I think you'll get a sense of if they're comfortable or uncomfortable. I would also say, especially to the men, like if you're a man and a gun owner and you start talking about gun ownership on a date with a lady, you're probably going to see her go like this. And she's probably going to be a little bit nervous because, I don't know, maybe you are like conceal carry, packing on a date, and that is going to freak her out if this is not something that she's comfortable with. So I'm almost saying try to talk about it without talking about it. Like pick other topics. Like if she would also, or he, think this, then they would be on board with gun ownership, and link another topic. Or maybe talk about if you've ever been to a shooting range, or like start with a lighter topic, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend that you put it on your profile.
And Stan in the comments is recommending to watch the politics webinar. So that's a great plug.
Yeah, if you watch the Democrat versus Republican webinar, you'll see there's a lot of conversation about this type of topic and all the political things that go along with it.
What about chronic illnesses? We touched on this a little bit, but people are mentioning specific ones like diabetes, things that you live with on a day-to-day basis, but are simply chronic.
Okay, so simply chronic diseases and things in that category are, like Danielle said, simply chronic. It is a part of your life. It is one of those skeletons in the closet. It is something that at a certain point you need to disclose because it's a part of your medical history, and it's a part of what you and a partner will have to deal with, right? If anybody's thinking like, well, why do I have to tell anybody? It's none of their business. It is their business. When they become your life partner, they become the one who you sign over the health waiver to, who gets to make decisions based on your health care and on who you are and what can be done for you. So somebody has to know what they're getting themselves into and has to be comfortable to be able to live with and manage and deal with things. Just for example, so besides diabetes, there's things like MS. And some people have a very serious case and other people have very mild cases. And I've seen matches where people get married and it's a non-issue. The person lives with it chronically, similar to diabetes, but the partner was informed before they got married. I would highly not recommend that you don't tell somebody that you secretly get married without telling them and they're like, oh, by the way, surprise, sweetheart, this is something you have to deal with. It's not how we would do things. So when to disclose, I would still say that middle range, not too early because you don't like me enough to know this information and you don't need to know it. Not too late, because if you're all into me, it's not an objective decision. I really love and care for you now. That's a problem because I can't weigh that with, oh my gosh, but I don't know that I want to choose this for my life partner. So it has to be somewhere right in that sweet spot in the middle where I like you, you like me, there's something happening, we're getting some momentum going. Okay, I think our relationship can handle the weight of this information. Let me share it. And also maybe, again, share a little bit of the information. And if they handle it and digest it well, then the next date you could share another piece of the information. I'm not saying to hold out. I'm just saying sometimes a whole brain dump about everything that's going on is like trauma for people. I've seen people give over their skeleton in the closet and they're like, I can't figure out why they didn't call me back the next day. And I was like, it was a little too heavy. It was a little too much information. You only need to give people as much information as they can process. And then you can give more information later on, and you can always update them with new info.
Other skeletons. Folks are asking about having kids, specifically two circumstances. One is already a mom of two, and if she were to meet a guy with no kids, when should she tell him that she doesn't want to have any more kids? Why don't you start with that one?
Okay, so that's a really good question. And when we're talking about having more kids, it's like, I guess it's not as much a skeleton in the closet as much as like a piece of information. Is it a skeleton? It's a good question. To me, it's more relevant that comes up a little bit sooner. If somebody's never been married and never had kids and of childbearing years, male or female, if you're going to pick a side, I would err to the side of they probably want to have kids unless they tell you they don't. So if they don't say specifically like, listen, I'm not interested to have kids, I'd love to date you and I'm so glad you have kids, it's great, it's a perfect match because I don't want any more, then that's going to be a great match for you. If they don't say that, they probably want kids, in which case I wouldn't tell them in that middle stage. Like, don't let them get hooked on you. Tell them in the beginning, listen, I'm so glad to meet you. You seem great. I do have two kids. I love my kids and I love children, but I don't want to have any more. So I don't know if that's a deal breaker for you. Whoopa. That to me, I think is more in the category of deal breaker than skeletons in the closet. And I would say to mention that within the first 2 dates, because you really don't want to lead somebody on if your values are, that's deal breaker / value. And I think they come up sooner than skeletons in the closet.
Yeah, that's a fine line there.
Yeah.
Another question regarding kids. So there's an attendee who is in her 40s and has not frozen eggs. She's not opposed to getting pregnant, but she just can't picture being a mother without already knowing with who. So it's something that she wants to figure out with a partner. How does she approach that sort of complex thought? Okay,
good question. So it's a good question. I've had clients in this category, and I usually tell them to share it also sooner rather than later. Let's say not a first date, let's say a second date, a third date, and to say something about, kids seem like a very normal part of everybody's life. And until I really have that right person in the picture, it's hard for me to picture a life with kids. You could, maybe express, I'm not one of those women that will be devastated if I never have children, because it's hard for me to picture having kids unless I have the right person in mind. And you might want to be open. Like, I could go either way. Like, I'm not sure. Will I want to have kids? Will I not want to have kids? Is it something that you're flexible about? Or how flexible are you? Or, hey, if you really need to have kids and I really think you're the right person, then maybe I'm going to be open to it, but maybe I only want to have one or two. It's not an idea that I'm married to, that I must have this or I'm going to feel a tremendous loss in my life. So I would say to talk about it, but like not a first date, save it for like second date, third date, as you get a little bit deeper and you start to open up about each other, because you're on the fence, because it's not clear cut to you, because it's like a maybe. So I would wait a little bit longer, but not too long.
And I will say that's more common, at least in my experience with folks, that they say, kids, not sure, I got to figure that out with a partner. So they want it to be like a joint decision or a joint conversation. Another question came, somebody who is in a 12-step program. So when to disclose the fact that they're currently in recovery.
Good question. So I would consider that a skeleton in the closet, and I would put it in that middle category of dating, like not too early, but within the middle category, because like there's beginning, middle, end. So within the middle category, I would put it in the earlier side of that category as opposed to the later side, because a 12-step program is something that takes a commitment and a dedication from you, and having a supportive partner in that is extremely important so that you can be successful throughout your lifetime in keeping your commitment and working through it. And I think that that's something that should be discussed a little bit earlier on. And if you don't have the right kind of a partner, or somebody who lacks a sensitivity or awareness or an understanding, or you mention it and they just freak out for whatever reason, it's not going to be somebody who could support you long-term as a partner. Not support you like you need them to be your support. You have your own support, but we always need a loving partner who's the right fit for us to be successful in anything that we do in life. So I would say in the middle stage where we're feeling more connected, but a little earlier on. Don't save it till the end of that middle stage. Do it, in the beginning or the middle of that in the middle of the middle, if that makes sense.
Perfect. On the topic of timing, someone asked a follow-up question about what you spoke about earlier, which is to wait until it's really a possibility that you two could end up together and that this could be your person. And so her question is, if that person is clearly feeling it, but you're not sure, then is it fair to let him get even more into you without knowing this important information just because you're unsure?
Okay, this is a great nuanced question, so thank you. So I'm just going to repeat it to make sure I got it, and maybe I interpreted it differently. But if I'm talking about this middle stage and let's say he is here and I'm here, even though we've gone out a bunch of times, I'm just at a lower level and he's at a higher level. Do we wait till he gets to an even higher level until I get to the middle, or do we do it when the partner's at the middle level? So this is like mind exploding question. So my answer would be, if at all possible, even though you're not feeling that connection because the other person is, can you share it a little sooner? If you have to wait a little bit till you get a little further along, but I don't want somebody else to have so much buy-in that he goes from the middle stage to the next stage. It's too far. So even if you're not 100% feeling it, maybe you want to give them less information. Maybe you want to just give them a little bit so that you feel like, okay, Aleeza, I did my due diligence. I told them a little something, but I don't want to tell them a lot. It's my private info. I'm still not comfortable with this person. The other thing is that maybe by you sharing this information and them receiving it well, maybe that could bond you. Maybe that's a binder. Maybe that's something that brings you guys closer together. And maybe that's a benefit to your relationship. And if it's not, maybe it pulls you apart and you weren't feeling so connected anyway. And now it ends it and you can move on. So never let either side get to that next level where they're feeling so connected that it makes it very difficult to share personal information. Like, why didn't you share this before now? We've been going out for so long. It's been so many times. I don't understand why you wouldn't have told me a few times ago. Like, this is already serious here. So you don't ever want somebody to say that that's too long. It needs to happen before that stage.
A question that's really my question, but it's relevant to some of the questions that I'm getting is, I'm curious about how you feel about like scripting, like writing in advance how you're going to say something that's difficult to share, practicing it even in front of a mirror, or like getting feedback from friends. I think that it could go two ways. That could be a really nice best practice and make you more confident, or it could end up feeling very like static and rehearsed. So what are your thoughts about that?
I like rehearsing. I am on board with you that it feel like when I say it and I say it to myself and I can almost like perfect how I'm going to say it, or I'm going to say this and you might say that. Oh, and then what am I going to say? And then you're going to say this and I'm going to say that. And then you like have that conversation before you have the conversation. So I like that we say things once or twice or three times on our own before we actually say it to the person so that we can get it right and feel good about what we're saying. You don't want it to sound scripted. So I would rather it be a verbal conversation with yourself in front of the mirror than a written thing. But some people are writers. I'm a writer, so I know. So writing it out helps me. Sometimes even just bullet points, like here's the topic, here's the 3 bullet points that I need to share, and here's how I need to wrap up and move on and get out of this conversation and get on to the next one, because I don't want to get stuck here. So I'm a fan of it. I like it. I think it's a great idea.
Another question coming in live about infidelity. So a man shared that a girl that he's dating shared that she had an illicit relationship at the end of her previous marriage, and she disclosed that. he also had an illicit relationship at the end of his previous marriage, and he has not disclosed that yet. He's done teshuvah, he's let it go. He's asking, is there any benefit for me to ever share my previous mistakes with her, or will that be detrimental to our relationship?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think if she ever found out that she shared personal information with you and you didn't share identical personal information with her, she's probably going to wonder why you held out on her. If you tell her now, as opposed to down the road, you could say, listen, this has been sitting with me and I know you shared with me, and maybe one of the reasons that I didn't share back with you was because this was your moment and I didn't want to take away anything from you opening up and you sharing with me. But I need to share with you that I had a similar experience and I can actually very much understand what you went through because I actually went through the same thing. And then you can open up and share. If you share it in that perspective where I didn't take away your moment, sorry, where I didn't take away your moment from you, where I just wanted to share, then and now it's the right time for me to say something and to say I really get it from a deep place, then I will respect you. But if I find out that you didn't tell me and I told you and I opened up to you and you didn't open up to me, do you know what I think? I think that I'm being vulnerable and I'm thinking you're hiding things. And if you're hiding that, then I want to know what else you're hiding. And are you ever going to hide that and do that behind my back again? I would much rather somebody be a little bit more open and lean on the side of openness, especially if I shared and I opened myself up. I think it's really important that the other side does as well. And it could it be detrimental? For sure, on both sides. It could be yes, that's why these are all skeletons in the closet. I'm not saying this is easy, but I think it's worse if they find out and you didn't say something, or you say something much, much later and it's so late that it's like, why did it happen then?
Someone who's dating in Orthodox yeshivish circles asked, she said, I'm an oversharer by nature. So how do I disclose unique family background and sibling complicated situations without going too into detail too early?
Love this question. Good point. If you're an oversharer and you tend to give way too much information and details, you've got to lean to the opposite end and you have to tell less. How much less? At least 50% less, maybe 75. Depends how much of an oversharer you are. But oversharers do what I would call word vomit, where it just like keeps coming and coming and coming and coming. And people, like, you can see their eyes are getting bigger as they're talking and they're just panicking because it's just so much information, they can't handle it. So whatever your story is, say it out, write it out, get it out, cut out 50%. What is relevant? Why do they need to know? And then ask yourself, what can I remove? Like, what's just a part of the story that's just a part of the story that I don't need to talk about? And then go through it that way. That would be my best advice, because oversharers do way, way too much. And they're like, I just want to do justice to the topic and I want to be out open and honest and real. And it comes from a genuine good place in their heart. But the problem is that for me as the receiver, the more that you tell me, the more that I'm like, oh, I was thinking into my chair. I can't handle the information. It's just too much. It's overload. So if we can avoid getting overload, that would be great.
Other questions around certain topics. We spoke about kids from another marriage, but when to disclose the fact that you are seeking a second marriage. So you've been divorced or widowed.
Just like that you want, I mean, I'm assuming if you're dating that's kind of like disclosed. Is this something deeper than that I'm missing?
No, that was the question. Like, how does someone looking to date for a second marriage approach the issue? So I guess when to share that. Totally
not a skeleton in the closet. I would write it on your dating profile when it says, you know, I'm looking for a friend, a relationship, marriage and kids. I would put down whatever is true for you. I would even write in my profile, I'm looking for a relationship. I'm not looking for a friendship. I'm not looking for just a casual relationship. I'm seeking marriage. I'm seeking a life partner. That to me is not a skeleton at all. I think that that's just a detail and a piece of information that people need to know so you can pick the right person to date.
Whoa.
Sorry. Adjusting.
Another skeleton relevant question someone asked is, when do you introduce the possibility of meeting your friends?
Oh, yeah. So that is interesting. So I'll give you a skeleton, because let's turn this into a skeleton question. Like, would you ever introduce somebody to somebody that you've already dated? Sometimes like people become friends with the people they date, not something that I definitely or generally recommend, but it happens. And my answer to that would be, you don't stay friends with them and don't introduce them. In short. But if we're talking about in general, when to introduce our friends. So friends can also do a good job of telling skeletons in the closet. And they're like, oh, did you ever hear the story or the time that he or she, and then they start sharing your information without you wanting them to share your information. You're like, no, stop, don't tell that one, right? So when should you introduce your friends? It's a good question, and it depends what circles you're in, okay? So if you are in very religious circles, they might not meet until you get engaged, and they're gonna meet you at the engagement party and Mazel Tov, here's all my friends. If you're anywhere in a traditional sense or moving into the secular world, you might introduce them and you guys might go out on double or triple or quadruple or friend dates and be all together. I would say, again, we're gonna go with this like middle category of dating. I'm not introducing you to my friends if I'm in the beginning. If I don't even know if I like you and you like me, you don't need to meet my friends. You need to like me before you like my friends. Because sometimes people introduce friends really early on and they're like, wow, their friends are great. They're amazing. Man, I wish I liked them as much as I like their friends. And then they want to like the person. And so they like try to like the person more, but they don't. So until you're in that middle stage where it's like, I like you, you like me, more like we would be boyfriend, girlfriend, right? Because we like each other enough, like we would be exclusive and we wouldn't mind that the world knows that we're dating. So at that middle stage, you could then introduce people to your friends, and you just have to know that your friends might tell your skeletons. So just beware of that.
And there's a follow-up question regarding what you just said. Why don't you generally recommend becoming friends with someone you dated?
We did a webinar on friends and friend zone and this whole thing, so you should totally check it out. But we talk about, this is my theory. This is my Aleeza theory. It's also in my book, Get Real, Get Married, by the way. It talks about men and women can't be friends. Either I like you or you like me. That's it. And if I don't like you, if I'm sure that you are just a friend to me, then you can be sure that that other person likes you. That's how the rule goes. There is a natural inborn connection between men and women to like each other and to make something happen there. And so it's just not going to be neutral. Somebody's always going to be interested. They're going to stay friends. Why are they staying friends? Because of the Aleeza drip, drip, drip rule. Because if I stay friends with you, maybe one day you'll date me. And guess what? Maybe one day you'll marry me. And guess what? It's true. It happens all the time. So if you really don't like somebody and you're like, I'm never marrying them, but I like them as a friend, I'd keep them as a friend. You can keep them as a friend, but guess what? You might marry them. So if you really don't want to marry them, you really shouldn't stay friends with them, because people that you hang around with, you might marry. People grow on people all the time. It happens all the time. And you don't even notice it. You're like, no, it's not going to happen to me. Sure, try me. Call me in 3 years. You might be married to them. Don't test it if you don't want to marry somebody like that. That's the short answer of why not to keep them as friends. The other answer is that you don't have enough space in your head and your heart to have so many people in there. And when you have this person filling your needs, you don't need to go meet somebody else because your needs are already being met by somebody else. You've got a friend who fills that need. And so like, now you're not in such a rush to find the right type of a person for you. You're just like, I'm fine, I'm good, it doesn't matter, it's okay. Anyway, this is a much longer discussion. You have to check out our Friend Zone webinar to get the full details, but that's like a little slice of it.
Little taste.
Little taste.
A lot of questions also about disclosing mental illness or mental health things. And there's sort of two streams of questions. One is if someone themselves has something like schizophrenia, bipolar, ADHD. And then another is if it runs in the family, if this person isn't personally experiencing it, but they do have it in their gene pool, so to speak.
Okay, great. Okay. So let's start with if it runs in the family. If it runs in the family, I'm going to tell that in the middle stage, because that's something that somebody needs to know. It's a piece of information. If it's genetically passed down, then the person who's going to be your partner has a right to that information. And you have to be connected enough. You could even tell it a little bit later towards that middle stage where we're really feeling connected. And, you know, if we're going to take this to the next stage, you need to know everything about me. For you personally, ADD, to me, we're talking about, you said ADD, what was the middle one? ADD,
bipolar, schizophrenia.
Bipolar and schizophrenia. Okay. So the difference between ADD and schizophrenia is enormous, right? So I think schizophrenia is something that people either A, might notice, or B, definitely needs to be shared on the early side, because it's a severe mental illness that really needs somebody that can help to care for them and love them in the right way to make sure that they can manage this together. If we're talking about ADD, I think, first of all, it's a term that's way overused. We have so many people who have it, and I think it's not really, it doesn't sound like a skeleton to me. It sounds more like a piece of information about me. And probably if you're ADD, people are going to know it because it's just like a built-in part to your personality. Like we could pretty much spot it on most people. If we are talking about, wait, tell me the middle category again. I keep forgetting it. I'm paying attention to the ends.
Bipolar? The middle one?
Bipolar. Bipolar is interesting. Depending on the mood that you catch somebody in, you may or may not notice it. And if you don't know that they have it, you might know something, but you might not really know. Bipolar is also, again, in that middle category that you need to share when you're feeling close enough to somebody and you want to share it with them. You know, whether it's genetic and it can be passed on, you know, there's ramifications if you're on medication, if you're stable now, how long you've been stable for, if you've been stable for 2 months, or if you've been stable for 2 years, or if you've been stable for 10 years, makes a really big difference. If you're going through any sort of anything and whether it's ADD or bipolar or schizophrenia or anything in any category, if you're not at a stable point in your own life, don't start dating. Get on the meds or get on whatever you need to get on that your doctor says. Get into your routine, become stable, become balanced, get a normal life order, and then introduce dating into the picture. I wouldn't bring dating into the picture until you're at a point where you could say like, oh yeah, things have been going great, whether it's the last 6 months or the last 6 years, but that I really have things under control and they're moving in a good direction, because then you could handle bringing somebody else in. If you're not in a great balanced place, it doesn't even matter. Like these aren't the only 3 things, but anywhere, like even if you had diabetes or any other physical illness or you know, long-term chronic condition, if it's not under control, spend time, get it under control, focus on you, and then bring somebody into the picture.
So we have a question from someone who's dating in their 70s, a widow in their 70s. And she says that I enjoy male company and male attention. Right now, I'm not interested in marriage, but that could change. So do I tell a guy that I'm not into marriage and I just want a strong connection?
I think that that's common. And you could just mention it, that you're looking for, maybe you want to say a long-term relationship. Some people use that as like a strong connection is a long-term relationship as opposed to marriage. And it's a very big difference. And a lot of people I find that are 60s, 70s and plus are not necessarily marriage minded, but they're relationship minded. I'm looking for a person. I'm looking for a companion. I'm looking for somebody to spend time with and enjoy my life with. And I'm not sure that that's going to take me to marriage, but I'm sure that I want something. So you could mention it. The other thing is, if you see that the other person isn't talking about marriage either, they might be on the same boat, because a lot of people in that category are just looking for a long-term relationship with a partner. And sometimes it ends in marriage and sometimes it doesn't.
A follow-up question to a topic that you covered a bit, but there's some nuance, I think, here. Do I need to share all faults at the same time, since some are major and some are minor? So you already talked about sort of stacking the information. What about tiny things versus really big skeletons?
Like multiple skeletons we're talking about? Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, imagine a closet with little skeletons and also big skeletons hanging.
Okay, so I would definitely start with little skeletons. And here's the rule of thumb. If they pass the little skeleton test number 1, then you could stack it with the next skeleton, which is the next bigger one. Basically, no, again, nobody needs your personal information unless there's a connection and unless we're taking it further. So if baby skeleton crashes the relationship, then they don't have access to any other information, right? If baby skeleton or medium skeleton number 2 crashes the relationship, then they don't have access. If they keep passing and they're like, okay, you can keep stacking the information and give them as much as they need, but I wouldn't dump everything on them because they just don't need it unless they're going to be your person. And you figure that out as you go through the relationship and as you give them more and more information.
So with our last 5 minutes, I'll try to get some of the questions that have been asked live, especially. People are listening.
Awesome.
We have another question regarding fertility. So this is a man dating a woman in the gray zone. That's not a term I'm familiar with, but can one ask her to undergo fertility testing? And if so, when?
Oh, so we've had this topic before, which is, let's say a woman is anywhere between, late 30s and early 40s. And he's like, great, we could get married, but I want to know if you're fertile enough and if it's going to work. So it's a really good question. The other thing I would tell you is, as much as women have challenges getting pregnant, men are also equally challenged. So if you're going to ask her to get tested, then my question would be, are you willing to undergo testing yourself as well? If you, as a man, present it to a woman and you say, hi, this is great. And in the modern day and age, let's just do a little bit of fertility testing now before we move ahead. If you're willing to, put your money where your mouth is and also do the testing, you might get a more positive response. But I'll tell you, in general, as a woman, like by me, do you want me as a human being, or you only want me as a mommy, right? Like if you want me as a human being, then that means if we have children, we have children. And if we don't, then maybe we go to plan B. Either we adopt, or we have a surrogate, or we make another plan. Like, are you looking for a mother and a wife of your children, or are you looking for a wife? Are you looking for a life partner? If you're not looking for a life partner with or without children, by the way, children grow up and please God, they should leave your home and then you are left with your spouse. The purpose of 2 people coming together is for that relationship to be a couple. I know raising children, having children, it's a major part of many people's lives. It's not a part of everybody's lives. And it can be a part of your life with your own children naturally or not. But if you aren't super committed to that person, like if you're committed to that person, then you're going to figure it out no matter what, whatever that means. If you're not, it doesn't give me so much confidence in the relationship, because anything could really break it, because you're committed to having a family, but you're not committed to that person. So it just leaves it a little bit in between. But to answer the question that you asked, because I'm answering a question that you didn't ask, but to answer the question that you did ask, my short answer is that, okay, hold on, coming back. The short answer is that I think that you should, if you're going to ask this, which I don't 100% recommend, but if you're going to ask this, that you are willing to get testing yourself also, and that's how you present it. Like whatever, it's the modern thing. That's what everybody's doing. I get tested, you get tested. We make sure that we're compatible. The other thing that people do is genetic compatibility testing. Nobody talked about this yet, but there are different places that do different testing depending on where you're from and what services you seek out. But a lot of couples do genetic compatibility testing. So if you want to throw in genetic compatibility with the fertility and you soften it a little, that makes it a little bit better. Just a little tip.
Good tip. There's a few related questions about speaking about past relationships. Should you ever do that when you're dating? If not, how do you avoid speaking about them? Someone said it's really hard not to.
It is really hard not to. We get this question a lot, and I don't like talking about previous relationships because I always ask the question, what good will come from this? Usually the answer is none. Usually jealousy and comparison and just schmutzy, yucky feelings that don't make things better. But if we're talking about divorce, I'm not going to marry you unless I know what happened. Like, what happened there, right? Your fault, her fault, you know, like not who's to blame, but like, what's going on and what do I need to know if I'm going to be in a long-term relationship with you and you had one that didn't work? What do I need to know? But only as a source of information to help our relationship. So I don't really have a fantastic answer because this one's really difficult. I mean, when I say fantastic, I mean, I don't really have a snappy short answer. That's what I mean by fantastic. Really, this is more personalized, and I would say only tell somebody relevant information. So your dating history, I'd rather you not talk about, but maybe like divorced or widowed, your history is relevant. I would say more of that. And your dating history is relevant only if it was a significant relationship, like almost married or something, and there would be a reason that you'd have to say something. And I don't have a reason on the top of my head that you'd have to say something, but a majority of the time, like maybe you had a past trauma from that and you want to make sure that somebody knows that, you know, this is important for you to know, but you got to tell from your side. Like, don't tell somebody else's garbage and baggage, just only from your own side.
All right, for our last question, this one feels universal enough to end on. So let's say you do tell the skeleton and then the other person freaks out. So is it just that relationship is not meant to be, or are there any lessons to learn from that experience?
Yeah, great universal question. So yes, the person's not for you if they freak out and then they don't come back to normal and they can't balance themselves out. And what's there to learn? So the lesson to learn, you got to ask yourself a bunch of questions. Did I tell too much, right? What was the quantity of information that I told? When did I tell the person? Did I say it too soon in our relationship? Did I say it too late in our relationship? Was this just not the person for me and they couldn't handle it? And should I have known that and maybe, you know, broken up beforehand? Or should I always give it a shot and share information? And also to just look at it and to say, would this have been a good partner for me? If this is how they reacted to this information, could they have really handled everything about who I am and what I am? So I would kind of ask those questions. I would really look back and just say, if it breaks and it's done, I would just say, thank you, God, for protecting me from a relationship that wasn't going to be the right thing for me. We always assume if it doesn't work out and it doesn't lead to marriage, then it's not the one that's for me. I did the best that I could and I made the best effort. If your intention is good and you're trying your best, even if you mess up, I don't think it's going to break the right relationship, because we all have things that we mess up. I've messed up in relationships plenty, and we still are rewarded with a relationship, but we do have to learn from our mistakes. If there was a mistake that happened, okay. If there's no mistake that happened, then it's not actually a mistake. It just wasn't meant to be, and we have to just accept that. So anybody who is live, stick around, because we're going to take it off the recording and we have something special to announce and to tell you about. And to anybody who is watching the replay, we are going to sign off and say thank you so much for coming. I'm going to give a 1-minute plug and just tell you that we work as dating and relationship coaches. We absolutely adore what we do. We offer these webinars, and for anybody who needs coaching or support, we would love it if you would reach out to us. You can find us at marriagemindedmentor.com. I have a whole amazing, strong team of coaches. Each one has a different specialty. And so if you call me or set up a 15-minute intro call, if you're looking for a coach, I could tell you who's the right coach for you and what we can do for you. And we would absolutely love to help you. So reach out, and thank you, Danielle. And thank you, Aviva, so much for being with us. And we'll see you guys next time.
My pleasure. Bye, everyone.